My name is Brock, and this is the Dungeon Master's Toolkit podcast. On today's episode, I talked to Ben about puzzles, low stats, and a bunch of other fun tabletop topics. As a reminder, we just finished up our design competition a couple days ago. I'll be taking a look at the entries and announcing the winners in the next episode or so. If you'd like to go to the Discord, you can go ahead and chat about future competition ideas. And with that, let's jump into the episode. Welcome, everyone. I have Ben Doherty here today. I probably butchered that, so apologies. Ben is a freelance writer, editor, streamer, and game master. Welcome, Ben.
Hey, Brock, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, great to have you. Ben, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got started in the tabletop role-playing space?
So, I'm Ben. I'm working TTRPGs, like Brock said, writing, editing, streaming, DMing, and I'm from Ireland, but I don't really sound like it. If there's any any Irish listeners, but basically, I started. God, I don't even know now. I mean, I think it was about 6 years ago. I had always, I love fantasy, and I was always loved making up stories. I wanted to be, a novelist, or I wanted to make video games. You cycle through all those things when you're a kid, and ultimately it kind of boiled down to wanting to tell stories. And I loved fantasy, and just kind of for many years I always liked the idea of Dungeons and Dragons. But it wasn't like a thing where me and my friends were growing up. No, we didn't know anyone that played it, and it was kind of one of those things. I mean, in hindsight, we like could have gone online and probably found rules or whatever, but it just seemed like this kind of inaccessible thing that, oh, we don't have that around here. But then, as I say, maybe 6 years ago, whatever it was, me and a friend were like talking about it, and I was saying, I'd love to try D&D, and we had been talking about setting up a more regular board game night, with like a few of us, and I had, mentioned, hey, we could maybe try do D&D, and so my friend, Mikey, just bought the starter set, the one with Lost Mines, Fandelver, and somebody needed to be DM, and like I said, I was like, hey, yeah, I like making shit up, so I said, I'll DM. So my first experience, tabletop role playing, I was the game master because somebody had to do it, and we didn't know anybody who played. So yeah, I think just we opened the starter set, and that was the first time I'd seen the rules, and I kind of read through them quickly. We looked at the pre-gens, and we kind of made rolled up some characters and stuff. And I was just reading through like Lost Mines of Phandelver, gymming it for the first time, just like going along. And I'm pretty sure I probably killed somebody in infamous goblin arrows section. I think somebody might have foolishly decided to play a wizard, and took one arrow and was dead. But yeah, that was it. I just in the deep end, and I didn't. It was a couple of years before I ever got to play as a player and make a character. Until one of our other friends decided to give me a break, and sit in the gaming chair.
So you kind of have the forever DM
Oh, it
issue
was.
as well. Just kind of jump right
Mhm.
in and
Yeah, it was forever DM for a while there. Yeah, actually, funnily enough, during COVID times, during lockdown, that was well, actually, sorry, no, before that, I saw my opportunity to play in a game where my local game store is a half-hour train journey away from where I live. So I started. I saw an opening in a group at the game store, and so I started traveling by train just to play for once, and that was really great. And kept that up for a while, but we had to put the game on hold during lockdown, and it had already been like not a very long time that I got to play, and I think we had like a break for Christmas, and I think I something about my schedule changed. I don't remember exactly what it was, but I couldn't attend the group, so I got a little taste of playing, but I haven't played or DM'd as much D&D as I have since since lockdown, and I think that's kind of the case for a lot of people. As much as I prefer in person role playing, it's a lot easier to schedule when everyone's online, and I think
Yep.
a lot of games it's death by calendar, that they. So I mean, I've DM'd and played more in the last 2 years than I ever did, and got to try more systems and stuff like that.
And so I want to come back to the multiple systems
Sure.
piece in a minute, but so what have you learned going from being a kind of just a starter DM, forever DM, and
Mm.
not having played to now where you've gotten a chance to play a little bit and you've been running more? Have you made some breakthroughs in terms of your DMing style?
Well, bro, I realized one thing, which is I'm a lot dumber when I'm a player. I like, I don't know what it is. It's like I get in the player's chair and suddenly it's like I'm terrible. Like I don't take notes. I just forget, and then I like, it's suddenly I forget how my spells work. I can keep all these monster abilities in my head, but it's like when I have spells, I don't know what happens. What comes over me. I'm a player, but yeah, I think it has helped with kind of knowing that player experience, and it really hammered home. It was something that I would try to do, but I mean I think it really hammered home the point of kind of trying to involve everybody in the party and trying to give everybody a chance to use some of their stuff. Like obviously not every single session, but you got a rogue that likes to pick locks, maybe have a couple of maybe if something that they can use their thieves tools, or they can use their cool ability, or just give them their moment, kind of do your best to arrange it in such a way that everybody has a little moment that's theirs and they got to shine. It kind of emphasized that, and it really hammered home that point. I think having been a player, and sometimes it's inevitable, and because it's not just the DM steering things, it's collective and cooperative storytelling. So everybody's got a say, but we've all had sessions, I'm sure, in a game of any RPG where you feel like you're kind of sitting there, and you didn't really get to do anything cool, or the kind of focus was never really, you never got your time in the spotlight, or to kind of do anything or tribute. And so I do try to tailor to that as much as I can. And also I've been on the player side of, like, I'm bad at making up puzzles. It's one way that I think I'm really just deficient as a game master, is that. But I being on the player side of a puzzle, again, there's been sessions where things grind to a halt because the party, we can't figure out some mechanism or some puzzle. And so I do kind of try to avoid that as much as possible, partly because I'm not very good at them, and also because sometimes I feel they can be more frustrating than anything, you know. And I think puzzles are sometimes better suited to the in-person play. There's something nice about maybe having a simple but kind of tactile puzzle that somebody, But yeah, I think more than anything, just yeah, hammering home that point of trying to give everybody a little time, that they can shine, and they, do the things that they made a character to be able to do. They wanted to role play a big strong guy, so let them kick down a door, or whatever.
I I really like that idea, and I think I've maybe mentioned that on like Twitter or somewhere.
Mm,
Um, Even if it's like you have a character that builds like a big tanky character, and they their whole thing is they want people to try and fight them, and they just want everything to just glance off their armor, right? So
mm,
instead of doing the logical thing from like the monster's perspective and throwing like some type of piercing attack or otherwise ignoring their armor in some way, send a bunch of like little minions at them to just swing and miss, because they're going to feel really good about
yeah,
their character
yeah,
build and concept and
yeah,
everything.
yeah.
It doesn't have to be all the time, but let them do the
Mhm.
things they're good at.
Definitely, and that's a good point actually. That something like that with, and there's a good contrast there actually between, say, having a bunch of little minions. If you throw like a bunch of little inconsequential minions at some big tank in heavy armor, and they're kind of just bouncing off of them, and just scratching off their armor, they still get to feel like they were this big tank. That it then, when if they do get hit by something, big, or this kind of armor piercing attack, or you say, go after maybe a save that they're not so good at. You got some kind of illusionist, wizard, or whatever it might be. It feels more poignant, and it's more emphasized then that it's like, oh yeah, because all that, little stuff just bounces off you. But so it took this kind of, it took this more powerful force to even hit you. That it kind of, by contrast, it emphasizes it.
Right, versus I've played in some games where the DM will see the, like, kind of like general character build and be like, okay, how do I not necessarily beat the players, but yeah, and I think in their mind it was maybe to challenge
Hmm.
us, but then it's like I built this character to do this thing, and then I got completely bypassed, and then
Yeah,
and it doesn't feel as great as just,
no,
you know deflecting a couple of blows.
yeah.
um you also mentioned puzzles, and I don't know if I found a lot of great resources for puzzles, even those. And I've seen
Mhm.
people talk about it online, as those can be kind of tricky because you have to make them simple enough that the party can get them, but if they're too simple or they're just happen to be too easy, then they'll just blow right through them. But if even sometimes basic puzzles can be really tricky, or if the players aren't in the right frame of mind or whatever, then
Yeah.
they just get completely stuck. And like you said, that can really bring uh the
Mhm.
game time to a halt, which is not usually what you want to do.
No, and it's funny because, and it, like, it's a valid point, and I've seen it, many times, either on, Twitter or Reddit, or anywhere, Facebook. You see it going around, and it is a valid point, but I think it's, and I don't think it's a good instinct, but there's almost like an instinctual, knee jerk reaction against this, or that we don't default to this, which is the idea of, like, you've got a puzzle, and kind of just, letting someone reasonably, it's like, my wizard is a lot more intelligent than I am. you know, that he should be able to make an intelligence check to maybe, like, get a clue or figure something out. Because it's like, if my barbarian wants to, again, maybe bust down a barred door, I don't have to make a display of strength to, I don't then have to show you that I can, that I can flip the table. And kind of, because we do the same thing with charisma, is where, it's fun. People will want to role play and what they say or whatever, but giving someone a penalty to a role because they weren't very charismatic when they said it is, it's kind of punitive, and I don't think it encourages people to really get into character, because they're gonna be afraid to, to get into character then. But similar thing with the puzzles, and but it is funny, if you do say they're stuck, and then you start saying, okay, well, you make an intelligence check, or making it, and then they roll really low, and then you can't give them a clue, and then, like, everybody does that. Everybody makes an intelligence check, and then you kind of, one way or another, you kind of just have to give them the answer, and then you and the players are afterwards just kind of like, it felt pointless because they didn't get to figure anything out, and they didn't really get to do anything, and oftentimes it's a very bad idea if there is a puzzle and that is the only way to advance, because it's very rare. It's basically never like that in any other situation, and it shouldn't be. Like, it shouldn't be the case most of the time that there is only one way to do something. It was actually with the company that I was working with. We didn't end up doing anything with this, but we were working on maybe making some like a trap supplement, or releasing some, like a little free little supplement with traps in it. Because I think it was around the time that Wizard of the Coast were running that, like, the DM competition, and I think the entry was, you had to design a trap based on the, like, trap template or rules in Xanathar's guide, and we did that, and that, also emphasized, or at least when we were designing them, we were trying to heavily focus on that, don't make it so there's only one way to circumvent a, because it is bad design.
Right.
You know, because, it's like, what if there's someone, like, no one has good investigation, and again, so I do think it is good sometimes to target people's weaknesses, because, it's dramatic, and it also, it kind of, throws them off balance a bit, but it definitely needs to be the minority of the time. It's maybe an 80-20 split in terms of, 80% of the time, just goblins are just, if they, bouncing arrows off the paladin's plate armor. But, maybe 20% of the time, a mind flayer, you know, tries to mind control them or whatever,
Right.
Yeah, but that's why I tend to try and avoid puzzles. One, I can't really come up with a satisfactory one, to be honest. It's just something I'm not good at, and I don't feel that they're ever that satisfying. Or well, sometimes I will have puzzles. And I did this not too long ago on stream, but they're rare. Like it was in a crypt. This like very expansive crypt complex underneath the city, and there were kind of traps and puzzles around a lot of these cursed tombs, but none of them were, or very few, like none of them were necessary to advance through the dungeon. There was a ton of routes through the crypt, and it was just kind of like, well, here's this puzzle that they may never figure out, but if they don't figure it out, they can just walk away. But if they do figure it out, hey, there's a magic longsword in the crypt, so maybe that's
Yeah.
the time to use puzzles.
Yeah, I
Not
was kind
sure.
of thinking having puzzles as like a bonus, or
Mm,
maybe they find like a puzzle box or something, and it's got
yeah,
something in it, and then they can just take it with them, and then they can just kind of
yeah,
gnaw on it during, as they adventure,
yeah.
but it's never
I
something that's impeding them from whatever their current quest is that they're doing.
Totally. Yeah, I literally, but back in the earlier days of playing in person, like I love props. I bought a bunch of real cheap, like jewelry and stuff online that, like, because it was like like a dragon necklace or something, and I just bought it real cheap because I was like, I'll make magic items out of these and I'll give them to the players, and I always wanted I didn't get around to it, or like have enough, or have a good something good. I never found something that I wanted to put in this puzzle box, but I wanted to get a puzzle box and give it to the players, and it would be, yeah, one of them's got it in the bag of holding, as they're traveling, doing their other quests, and maybe every night, they try and figure it out. But yeah, actually speaking, I mean, that's one thing I really miss about in person. I mean, in particular, is the props and things. Like I would make, like, I bought a bunch of little jars, like little potion, glass jars, and a bunch of food coloring, and I made potions of all different colors, and so you actually get to drink the potion. It's just those little things, that kind of really help to put you in place and immerse you into the experience. And I do miss that. um
Yeah, that's something that I haven't really gotten to play around with much because we haven't. My first campaign that I played in was an in-person game, but that is, since been done for a while, and now with
mhm.
with COVID and where we're living and everything, friends are usually never. It's always,
Sure.
everybody moves away, and then everything's online,
Yeah.
because that's the easiest way to do it. So.
Mhm.
Um, that makes me have some ideas for props for my daughter though when she's older. I can start collecting stuff now so I can get her into the game.
Yeah, it's the
And
number one reason to have kids. It's players.
and they don't have a say in whether or not they get to play or not.
Yeah. Yeah, you're grounded, and I'm taking away your phone and your iPad and your PlayStation. There's nothing else to
No,
do.
and there might be some bribery there too, right? Like, oh, if you guys go help with this chore, then you get 5 gold for your character.
Yeah. Oh, I thought you meant. Yeah, I'm now imagining that it's like, yeah, you're given chores, and it's like, okay, one of you, one of you's got to take the garbage out. One of you has to go play D&D with Dad. And it's like, oh, okay, I'll take out the garbage. It's like, no, no, I had to play D&D last week.
That's what I want to not happen. I want them to
No,
enjoy playing with me.
for sure. Yeah,
um,
I was. Oh no, sorry, go on, bro.
oh, yeah, you can go ahead.
No, I was gonna say I was. Oh, yeah, I'll have to wait for my niece and nephew to get a bit older. But I was really disappointed. Like just before COVID, I was due to. I was gonna DM like a kids group at that local game store that I used to play at. But then it was like during the summer when I had more time, and obviously the kids were off. But yeah, no, it was a shame we never got around to it because I mean, like on the subject, I do think it's really valuable for kids. It teaches so many great skills. Teamwork, creative thinking, empathy, like problem solving. It's great for getting kids out of their shell. And I was a weird kid. I was a nerd, and we didn't like me and my friends didn't have that where we were growing up. I would have killed for a game store. Go play D&D. It would have been awesome. So it was something I kind of wanted to do, and you know, kind of get some kids interested in it, and for the kids that you know don't like going out for sport or whatever, or maybe they're kind of in their shell a bit. But it was a shame that it because COVID obviously we couldn't do it, and it's I think they're running them now. They started the kids group, but unfortunately I just don't really have the time at I kind of did back then, but it just doesn't work out. It won't work out now. But it was a shame because it was something I wanted because I do think it's really can be really beneficial.
Oh yeah, for sure. I'm in the same boat. We didn't really have, or I didn't know of anybody who did it when I was growing up. So I would have also been really excited if that was something that was even an option. When I
Yeah.
was growing up. You mentioned that you've played different systems, or you've been getting into different
Mhm.
systems. What have you branched out into?
So I think the very first time, or so I think the first like non D&D RPG I played was I think we were in the middle of my first like campaign that I got to finish in lockdown. I was online. We were playing Curse of Strahd with some people I didn't really know. I met them all online, but they're now one of my home group where I get to play. And I got very lucky because we all got along very well and they're great people. But we were having like an off session, or there was two people who couldn't make it, so we didn't really feel right to continue on without everybody, and I think we might have been at a fairly critical point. So the GM decided to run a session of Traveler, that like kind of space western game, and I hadn't heard of it, but I played and I kind of had fun. But that was the first time. It was just that one game that we played. First time we'd ever done another system. In terms of something that was really good. It's honestly maybe it's probably the best role playing experience I've ever had. Just straight up role playing and getting into a character was a friend of mine. He actually if people want to check out the Romancing the Dungeon podcast or Rise of the Forsaken on Twitch, it's D8 Dungeon. But a friend of mine who founded that ran these games all on Discord, all text based, like an adaptation or an adaptation rather of the game Werewolf, like kind of parlor game where I think it's also called Mafia, and sometimes it's called Murder in the Dark.
Yeah,
Um,
that's fun. I just got that for Christmas.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, the basic premise is like one of you is a werewolf, is the killer of some kind, and nobody knows who it is except the killer, and you're all trying to catch them. But he ran these games which were like they ran from this was deep lockdown. Everyone was at home. We had nothing to do, and it was like would go from like 11 a.m. to like 8 p.m. all day, and you could when people had time they would write in, but it was all text role play, and it was broken up, so it was like the first one I played in was this it was set in the Wild West, and it was basically a werewolf, but it kind of turned out to be a Wendigo. And yeah, I love these games. It was just you got really into it, and you were playing a character, and you would vote for who you thought was the killer, and it was like it was like living in the best TV show I'd ever seen. Because what you would do is the following morning, he would do a write up of the scene of who had died. So somebody would be killed every day. And you'd be reading along, and you'd see your character's name, and it was like, oh no, and it would cut back and forth between it was like so intense. So I played in a couple of those, and then I ran some, and I absolutely loved it. I did like a Victorian themed one, and did this kind of Stephen King 1970s vampire one set on an island in Maine that I just it was I know they were so fun, and that was like just a fantastic just pure role playing experience. And I think that's actually becoming a bit more popular now, like people doing play by post, whether it's D&D or whatever. So just when you have time, so the scheduling is kind of out of the way, so you're all texting in. And I actually employed it in my one of my home games that I was running, where we decided that like if there were things that the characters wanted to discuss that didn't happen, quote unquote, on screen, like the things that they would discuss maybe like around the campfire, and we can kind of flash back and assume they talked about this. So we had like a downtime channel in our little
Yep.
Discord where we would do video call, so they could just be like, "Hey, let's flash back to blah blah blah," and they might ask somebody about where they grew up or their backstory or blah blah blah. And I found it's been really good to have that tool. But sorry, in terms of other systems, after that tangent, also my group from the games when we moved online. Well, actually, first we did an all bard D&D game where we were a family band. And but
Nice.
we were all it was very, Guardians of the Galaxy 2, where our father was this kind of demigod. So we were all different. One of us was a minotaur. I was a tiefling who like I wanted to look like an Arcanoloth, this jackal-headed guy. There was an Asimar, like angel dude, and an orc. And so this guy had sired all these, you know, interdimensional children, and we had all formed a band. But that game group, our GM ran a game, or we did it for like a few months. It probably amounted to about 6 to 8 sessions in total. Because sometimes we wouldn't play for 3 weeks. But we ran Symbaroum, and I don't know if that's exactly how it's pronounced, but I think it's Free League. If I'm fucking that up, apologies to the publishers of Symbaroum, but it's a Swedish role playing game originally. It's a great like, dark fantasy system where magic is very dangerous. So like there's no classes, and it's not like a level system really. You kind of you level up individual like basically feats, or perks that you pick up. So one might be like a sort of like a two-handed fighting thing. You like being good with a big heavy two-handed weapon. You'll
Sure.
get some kind of benefit from that. But each individual spell was its own like skill, its own feat, and anytime you learn a spell for the first time, you would take corruption. And the same thing would happen when you cast a spell, you might take corruption. A certain amount of corruption, you would turn into an abomination, and it would manifest physically, on your face if you were corrupted. So, yeah, it was like magic was really dangerous and very powerful. And so it was this gamble to take it. And I've often wanted to play a Dark Sun D&D game, but especially with the way psionics is in 5th edition, and psionics being very important to Dark Sun, I was just thinking like a couple weeks ago that Symbaroum system could actually be even better for Dark Sun than 5th edition D&D, because the whole like casting magic being a corrupting influence. Because in Dark Sun, for people who don't know, it's casting magic drains the life force from the planet, and it's called defiling. And there's people will hate you if you're a defiler because you're continuing to you're furthering the destruction of this already nuked planet. So the mechanic of the corruption being visible, and the abomination, it's sort of like the King Dark Sun, becoming kind of monstrous figures. And lastly, oh, actually, I've also played a bit of Mothership, which was very good. That more recent released sci-fi like horror RPG. It's very alien kind of vibe. We played a game of that on stream, which was very fun. And then most recently, my home group where I'm a player, we played Call of Cthulhu for the first time, which was something that I've been wanting to play for a while. And immediately, I loved it. It's such a nice change of pace from. I mean, I love D&D. It's always going to be my number one, probably. I absolutely love it. But Call of Cthulhu was a very nice change of pace to feel, completely powerless and overwhelmed. And I would like to maybe get a bit more proficient with it and run a game of that someday, because yeah, and the backstory of characters in Call of Cthulhu is often like mechanically incorporated. So your backstory is actually very important, because if you fail sanity checks and you gain a phobia or some sort of mental condition, the GM can actually alter your backstory, and sort of mess with the character's mind, with the exception of like one aspect of your backstory you make what the term is, but it's like a treasured memory or a treasured artifact, and it's kind of your anchor, so that if you are lost sea of psychological trauma, you can try and pull yourself back from the brink by focusing. It might be a place, somewhere with your grandmother's house. But I've been learning about Call of Cthulhu. I've been trying to brush up on it and come to grips with mostly through Seth Skorkowski's YouTube series, which is a really good resource if you want to learn about Call of Cthulhu and how to play it. And actually Traveller as well, which I think he's got over the other RPG. But yeah, that was a very long-winded way of saying that played a tiny bit of Traveller, a tiny bit of Mothership, tiny bit of Call of Cthulhu, and a bit of Symbaroum, amongst some other things.
Are there things from those systems, whether it's mechanics or ideas or something, that you've brought back to your D&D games?
Well, I haven't had a chance with this Call of Cthulhu one yet, but funnily, I was actually just earlier today talking to GM of that game about how I'd like to incorporate the chase from Call of Cthulhu into D&D games. So, just very simply, like the way it works is, say you've got the chase is broken down into like certain zones, and a zone could be as short as the distance from one door to another in a hallway, or it could be across a cornfield, but there's basically just kind of points of interest along a chase. And then you would have like hazards in the way, but also, I think, like permanent, like obstacles, which might be like a hazard might be, mud that you might slip on. But like, a blockage or an obstacle, I forget the term, would be like a locked door. So you would essentially you go by everyone's movement speed. Like there are mechanics. I think I'm making it sound very complicated, but there's a visual element to it because you map these things out on just a line with dots, for each sort of point of interest. And I think it's yeah, surprisingly, I think at a first glance it would seem sort of weird or maybe like not that dynamic, but it's a great way of breaking down a chase, and it seems really fun to implement. So like something like that, especially because like we went through a rooftop chase, or well, not just rooftops, down onto the street, a chase in Waterdeep Dragon Heist, the adventure. And now part of this could have been, maybe if it was, maybe there was a different way to run it, but that was a bit frustrating at times. D&D can be good at that, and Matt Colville has good videos about like ongoing skill challenges, like maybe you're trying to, run through a city, or quickly get through some woods. You all throw out, I'll use survival to help us, find a way, and I'll use strength to, maybe there's a log, that we need to get, stretch across a river, so I'll pick it up, and I'll make a bridge and all that kind of stuff. But I think the chase rules from Call of Cthulhu could be implemented into a lot of other RPGs. And I feel like as I play more of it, I think a lot of the kind of investigative stuff and like horror aspects, I can definitely see making their way in. But I'm trying to think of, in terms of D&D, but like stuff from Symbaroum, I want to steal or be inspired by, steal from Symbaroum for this, just something on like the back burner in the back of my head. I'm just working on a little RPG of my own using the Caltrop core system, which is really fun. Oh god, I'm gonna butcher the name. It's their name is the war between the Olympians and the Titans in Greek mythology, and it's the Titan the Titan Nomaki, I think, is how you pronounce that. Apologies for reading that. But the Caltrop core system is. But I really liked Symbaroum's kind of bespoke character building system of like, you maybe take the skill or the talent that, like, you're good with a big axe or whatever, but you could still take like a spell. So I'm working on a system called that I want to call Flesh. It's this kind of zombie apocalypse in the Middle Ages. It's no magic or anything, but I really liked that system from Symbaroum where you're really picking. Yeah, you really can make a unique character. There's very few restrictions on any of what kind of talent can take, what perks. So that was very interesting as a system, especially coming from D&D. Obviously, what you can and can't do is often very prescripted by your class, and you kind of can often get set on a track from level one.
Yeah, I definitely feel that when I'm making D&D characters. A lot of times I'll get an idea and then it's like, oh, but so I need to like multi-class and do some of this stuff, and then it's like, yeah, but is
Yeah.
that like what I want to do? And then you can really go down the rabbit hole. So I am always interested in systems that are either classless or allow just maybe more ease of customization, maybe
Yeah.
to get a
Like
character concept.
Yeah, like one thing that I do in some of my home games is like with D&D. Now this isn't. I don't want the characters to have no flaws or no bad stats. But I basically when I would get someone to make a character, I'm like you could do point buy, and I link them to point buy calculator called Chicken Dinner, which is a very good point buy calculator for 5e. It's very good. And instead of the 27 points, I give them 34, 35. I've forgotten now. It's been a while since I started a home game. These rules, so they get more points. And instead of the limits being 8 being the lowest and 15 being the highest, you can put a stat as high as 8. So you can start with a 20 if you want, and you can go as low as 3. So like if you want to make a character who has like a a minus 3 strength and like I think Matt Colville mentioned they played a game where, and I've done this too, where somebody rolled their stats with a d20, so you can get 1 to 20, and somebody got a goblin that had like a 20 intelligence and a 1 strength, so he made him a really powerful wizard, but his strength was minus, so he had 1 strength, so he made it so that he wasn't able to move his body, he couldn't move his body under his own power. He was so weakened, his muscles were atrophied. So one of the other party members like carried him on his back, like on like a palanquin, or sort of like a Master Blaster, Mad Max Thunderdome kind of situation.
Yeah.
And this goblin was like slinging spells from the back of the barbarian or whatever. So I think having more points so that you can make a range. So if you want some, because sometimes it's difficult to. It's like like I want to be, because you should definitely always have a negative modifier in at least one thing. I am a proponent of that. You should be bad at, but then yeah, it's more points to play around with and kind of make exactly the character they want to. And also, I give everybody a free feat because a lot of the feats are, if you want to keep up pace with optimization or whatever, they're just things you might never take, really. But if it's
Oh,
something that
sure.
makes you feel, and the thing is, yeah, on average, those characters in those games, they're more powerful than most level 1 characters. But I mean, level 1 is a very deadly level anyway. It's very easy to wipe somebody out, unintentionally. And 2, it's like if they're more powerful, like I just throw harder monsters.
Right,
It's not
right.
like
There's
it's always in your hands to just up the ante and balance against them. Obviously, you can get into a kind of toxic GM versus players mentality there. But I don't mean it in that sense, but just you can challenge them. You're in total control of what they come up against. But
yeah,
definitely that customization I like.
I would say that the feats that you can get in 5th edition are not going to be as game breaking as just them having certain class abilities, right? Because there's or certain
Yeah,
like high level spells and stuff are going to be more game breaking than uh, being able to do more damage with your bow or whatever. Um,
exactly.
to jump back to that goblin example, when you were describing that, the first thing that I thought of was like Professor X, because he's like this
Yeah,
master, telekinetic master person, and then but he's in a wheelchair, right? So like
yeah,
he's got some physical limitations as well. Yeah, and then
yeah.
you said that the barbarian just carried the goblin, so that's
But
is
like, and yeah, I often, and this is probably one of like my first character that I ever got to play. My good friend was said he was going to DM, and we only played three sessions of this game before we kind of got TPK'd. Well, 2 of the guys got turned to stone by a Medusa, but technically I was knocked out. So in my head canon, my character still lives somewhere. He's just a hostage of the cult. But this guy, and it was actually really funny. Uh, I hadn't ever watched Critical Role, and I was really like I decided to kind of get into it, and in campaign 2, and I started campaign 2, and when people were revealing their characters, I was very happy to find that me and Travis had made like superficially very similar characters because I made a Hexblade who was a sailor who had who had encountered his patron after you
Oh,
know
sure. Yeah.
so I made this I made a you know a very original. I made a he was called Dagon Caliban, and we've got a Lovecraft reference and a Shakespeare reference because it was nothing if not pretentious. Trying to impress my friends, I guess. No, but this Dagon Caliban was so it's like I made a warlock, and I was I gave him negative, which most people would probably be like, "That's a terrible idea. You need it for perception checks and wisdom saves." Which but he was fanatical and so convinced that his patron, like he thought he couldn't die, that he was supposed to be here. His patron had ordained all this, so he would just walk into danger. And if he died, he died. He was a very sort of a Viking berserker kind of character. But that was just fun to roleplay. I was like, he was a bit deranged, to be honest. He he was hearing voices in his head, and I've also done that on stream. I play because I DM one stream, but play in another one, and I play a very naive paladin, and he has negative wisdom because he's a kid essentially. He's a 16-year-old squire, and he's naive and optimistic, and so he has very little common sense, and I like playing big characters who have a negative dex. The other big stat that you definitely shouldn't dump,
Yeah.
because it's your initiative and it's dex
It's
saves, but it's like
everything.
no, he's slow, it's them's the breaks, and that's why I like giving lots of points at point buy so you can have a big range, and it's like, hey, you want to have you want to have that -3 dex, but be built like a brick shit house, like go for it.
If he can catch you, he's gonna pummel you.
Exactly.
I think that's really cool, and especially like you mentioned with your warlock, just kind of wandering in, and not necessarily like because like the dumb barbarian is a trope,
Mhm.
you know, but like in this case, you weren't doing it just because he was dumb. It was more so because he was like convinced of these things, and he couldn't see past that, which is a much different angle to play
Mhm.
like a character flaw, which is
Mhm.
cool.
Yeah, he was just in his own world. It was like, well, I can't, and should if I am to die, then I suppose that would have been ordained by the great old one,
But
basically.
right, that was your purpose anyways, so
Yeah, so it was, I also stole from the Song of Ice and Fire books. I think most of the people that I think he's probably one of the least popular point of view characters, but the character of Ario Hotar, who is married to his axe. I did the same thing that this guy was married to his packed weapon. It's just I don't know why that really like stuck with me. I mean, in the books and at least in my head canon with my character, like there wasn't any freaky deaky stuff going on with the weapon. I think it was a sexless marriage, but but still, I always kind of thought that was an interesting idea. Yeah, he was just a bit he was a little bit odd. This guy, he was, but fun to role play. Just to go just into a room, just cackling. I mean, not well, sometimes literally. Just laughing and swinging a glaive, swinging his wife around the room. you know,
It's a dance.
it's a yeah. Yeah, there's just like little cans tied to like ribbons off the back of the off the back of the glaive, just saying like just married.
Oh, it's just a great image to
Yeah.
have. Well, we're kind of getting close to time here, so we should maybe chat a little bit about what you and projects and stuff, or tell us about what you do.
Yeah, so like I said before, freelance, G writer, and editor, mostly for fifth edition because it's what I know. It's what I know best. Last year, mostly been doing a lot of work with a company called Penny Dragon Games. So we've done a few Kickstarters in 2021, and we've got more on the horizon. But most of the bulk of what we do is our quarterly magazine, Mag of Holding. So first issue. This was actually the first issue. The Kickstart was run before I came on board, but we've got a Frozen Wastelands kind of ice winter themed Second was, I'm sorry, pardon me, Pirates and Seafaring Adventures. The third was Gothic Horror, which was the first magazine that I wrote on and edited all of that. And then still in production, we have the Breath of the Feywild magazine, which was our sort of winter, and so those have been really fun to write for and to edit. It's free and it's helped. I think with game design for DMing as well. Kind of getting into the nuts and bolts of things. But so we've been doing that, and then with Penny Dragon as well on their Twitch channel. I play in one stream, which is a Humblewood game, the campaign setting by Hit Point Press, where everyone is a sort of a woodland critter. It's a bit Redwall, a bit mouse guard. And actually, I play a mouse paladin who, well, actually, I was gonna say something, but it would be a spoiler for the for last session. So if anybody does want to watch it, you can catch up with the VODs. You can catch up with previous sessions on the Penny Dragon Games YouTube channel. But we stream on. So I play in that game, and then I DM my own game called The Cloaks of Minehelm, which is it's not the setting of my own creation. It was created by our CEO Paddy Finn. But in essence, the players are members of the kind of lowest rung on the City Watch ladder, and they're the Brown Cloaks. So all of the City Watch and all the, oh, not the, but all of the like law enforcement for this land are the cloaks. So they all have a cloak of different color. So blue cloaks in the ports and green cloaks for the countryside, kind of thing. But the brown cloaks patrol the cities, and they kind of are the bulk of the force, and they do all the dirty jobs no one wants to do, including patrolling the sewers, which is like a large part of of what they do. And actually, as well as being the thing that they encounter in the first episode of the stream, is also the first piece that I ever designed for Penny Dragon Games. Was my monster, the excremental, which is just, if anyone knows what a fatberg is in the sewers where like stuff just accumulates, just waste and garbage and runoff, and it just clogs up the pipes. I was like basically that, but animated, so it's a big poo ooze. Like, so I think that will tell everything you need to know about me as a designer. Is puns and just terrible ideas. I'd like to think executed okay, but so that's been a lot of fun. Especially because we have a wonderful tech guy, Christian, takes care of all the stuff that I would be horrible at. So I just get to show up, half an hour before go time and just DM. I don't have to worry about Twitch. Because I would be terrible at that. I'm so bad with technology. But that's been good. And then more recently, I've had some stuff. I've been working a little bit with Icarus Games, and their magazine, the Side Quest magazine. I think I should have some stuff in the next issue coming out for that, and maybe some stuff in the following one. So that's been great. Anto from Icarus Games has been great to work with as well. And then just a couple other projects. Some creative, partner of mine that I've worked with in Penny Dragon Games, Kyle Gray. He's at D&D Armory 1 on Twitter if you want to check him out. He's got some stuff releasing on the DMs Guild soon, which I've been editing for him, and also we're working on a couple projects, and I'm working on some stuff myself. So should be some DMs Guild stuff coming out soon. But that's the bulk of it really. As I said, a lot of what I've been doing is Penny Dragon Games. So either through you can look up. Actually, I think the Kickstarters are under Paddy Finn. But if you Google Mag of Holding, it'll come up, and I think our web store should be coming up soon, and the magazine should be available through Amazon and Nord Games. I think soon Nord Games are fulfilling some stuff for us, and and then check out the Twitch channel. I stream our game every other Sunday at 6:30. Well, I think we're moving to 7 p.m. GMT, but that's the next one's actually this Sunday. So, and then I play every other Friday in that Humblewood game. A great DM, Richard Dufault. And yeah, that's every Friday on those same weekends. The next one will be in just a couple days' time on the 28th at 7 p.m. GMT as well. And we got other streams on there, so you can check them all out. But they're all up on the YouTube channel too if you want to go back, watch previous episodes. Watch it for the players. Who wants to listen to me? No, but that's yeah. I'm excited about. We've got a. Trying to think. Is there anything? What can I? Is there anything that I can actually say? I don't know. Oh well, actually, in the it might be. I don't know if pre-orders are still going, but I had a lot of fun actually. Most recently, the Mag of Holding in the last issue. I had to cut some stuff for kind of for space for page count. But again, I'm sure as you've seen in this episode, I've got a tendency to ramble, but I really like this adventure that I made called The Willow and the Wardrobe, which is a bit Narnia, a bit Alice in Wonderland, a bit Wizard of Oz, and a bit Grimm's fairy tale. So you can check out the Mag of Holding, Breath of the Feywild when it's out, if that's appealing. Or in issue 3, the Gothic horror magazine, there was an adventure that I wrote with a Varkalak, which half bat, half pig, half human, man bear pig creature, and a hunky punk, which is a very diminutive gargoyle. Because I had to make this monster because I heard the term somebody when I was playing D&D, they used the term hunky punk, and I'd never heard. I was like, what? And I googled it, and apparently it's like I think Northern England, maybe the term. It's like kind of another word for gargoyle. So I was like, that's amazing. A hunky punk. Like, doesn't that just sound like a little little mischievous gargoyle, just like a little stone dickhead, just like you want it, like a little imp. So that it's been a lot of fun, and they've been, it's there's people, there's great stuff in there from tons of other creators, but yeah, so I should be releasing some stuff on DM's Guild soon, and just other than that, yeah, just check out the streams, and you can follow me on Twitter. Now this is going to be tough. It's at Spongenmaster, but there's a long story behind that. But it's SPONGEON Master. So you should find me. So I've been posting on there more recently, and I've got a couple. Like when I hit 777 followers, I'm going to release just a celestial monster for free for everybody. Because I did a were hellhound called a Werebarus for 666 followers, which was my girlfriend's very inspired idea. So yeah, you
That's
just
awesome.
follow me there, and you can find out kind of what I'm up to at the moment, and yeah, release some. Been releasing some free stuff like an orb pondering wizard subclass if you're into that. So yeah, I'm gonna stop talking now.
Cool. Well, yeah, we got the plugs and stuff out of the way, so that's perfect. I think one last question for you, and I think
Mhm.
it's gonna be kind of cheating since you're a writer for role playing games already. If you could have any book made for like a tabletop or for an RPG or
Mm.
something, what would you put in that book? Which like I said, you're already doing a
Oh.
lot of that, so.
Oh God, yeah, but there's so many things that legally we're not. No, no. God, that is a good question. What would I do? Well, one thing, and again, maybe this is cheating, but something that I've been thinking about recently. I would like to. It came up actually. Somebody was talking about it. Got talking on Twitter about it, but there's not a whole lot in 5th edition D&D really about curses. So I'm kind of hoping in the future, sometime soon, once I kind of, I got I got stuff on my plate right now that I gotta, you know, that I gotta get through. But I'd like to put out some kind of a book of curses, because it's really something that they kind of touched on it a little bit in Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft. But especially for that kind of book, it just wasn't. I don't know. It was on my mind because I was, as I said, on stream. We were in that running that adventure in the crypt, and so I just had to. I made a bunch of random curse table for when our rogue inevitably started grave robbing. So
It's always the
yeah,
rogue.
it's that's a resource, I think. So yeah, curses is has been on my mind recently. You know, Oh, also the other thing, sorry. No, I tell you what I would do, is, now that there are some other options out there, but it's been on my mind for a while. I do wanna at some point, I have a gnoll race that I wanna release because I absolutely love gnolls in D&D, the hyena people, and, I just think more options to play a gnoll, but, I don't know. Are they boring answers? I I don't know.
Yeah, they never boring answers here.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, Ben, I appreciate you coming on the show. It was a blast talking to you.
Yeah, I really appreciate you having me on, man. Thanks very much. I had a great time.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of the Dungeon Master's Toolkit podcast. You can find links to all of the products and resources that we talked about on the show in the show notes. And if you'd like to join the community or find out how to be on the show, check out our subreddit or join us in our Discord server.